The email confirmation came at 4:16 a.m. Martian time. I watched the message flicker onto my screen line by line like a gift being unwrapped. Final seat reservation confirmed. Kaoru Evelyn Cabin A2//Mars transfer window. May 2074//priority. Founding sponsor. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just exhaled. Because this wasn't just a trip. It was the closing of a loop. The one that began 38 years ago, when I was a child sitting on my father's lap as he pointed to the rust-colored planet outside our observatory window. Mars, Evelyn. That's where pioneers go when Earth's too scared. Back then, he was Dr. Yuji Kaoru, lead ecologist on the failed biocanopy project, blacklisted after he went public about soil corruption cover-ups. My classmates called him the Martian who never left Earth. And me, I was just the shadow that trailed him, the quiet daughter who memorized orbital windows before multiplication tables. For 20 years, I stayed behind the curtain. Every prototype, every press release, every tech grant that carried his name had my fingerprints under the label. So when I finally earned enough to fund one seat, then two, then four, I built the perfect itinerary. 0G shuttle from Houston, 4-passenger orbital sleep pod, 1-week Mars stay capped with a surface Eva in full suit. The trip wasn't just a gift. It was a redemption arc. For him, for us, until he rewrote the ending. They always said I had the mind for outer space, but apparently I didn't have the face they wanted in the family photo. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had just landed a research grant for $2 million for microbial terraforming on Titan's ice crust. I was halfway through my victory ginger tea when the message came in. Dad, come by tonight, 8 p.m. family dinner. Sila's will be there, we have news. Sila's, a name that still tasted synthetic in my mouth. 27, top of his aerospace class, bright, loud, brand hungry. He called my dad Doc and me Evie, like we were all just one big TED talk team. At 8:03, I stepped into the house I helped rebuild after the Houston floods. The kitchen smelled like jasmine rice and old loyalty. Sila's was already there, perched on the edge of our dining table, spinning one of Dad's old mission patches on his finger like a toy. Mom, well, my stepmom, Lillian, gave me a soft nod. I knew that look. It meant, this isn't my battle. Then Dad stood. We've been talking, he started, arms crossed like he was giving a briefing to cadets. And we think it's best if Sila's takes your place on the Mars trip. Just like that, I blinked once, twice, waited for the joke to land. It didn't. You've already gone on a lunar run, he continued, as if this were a practical calendar reshuffle. Sila's has never left Earth. He deserves this chance professionally, and he's like family. I didn't respond, because how do you reply to betrayal dressed in mission logic? Sila's smiled. That kind of half-shrug smile that says, I know this is awkward, but I'm still winning. We'll still credit you, my dad added. Your name stays on the sponsorship, but for the seat, it just makes more sense this way. I looked at the Mars patch on the wall, the one I hand-stitched into his birthday quilt. I looked at the suit rack, where my Eva suit hung, still in its sealed case, with my initials on the chest plate. You gave my seat away, I said quietly. No, he replied. We reassigned it. Funny thing about reassignment, it only works if the person you're reassigning doesn't own the rocket. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't say goodbye, didn't ask why, because I already knew. They never expected me to be angry, only efficiently disappointed. The kind of daughter who fixes things quietly, even when she's the one breaking. But that night, I didn't fix a thing. I logged in. My private server booted to the hum of 3 a.m. Silence. The room lit up with soft blue from my Space Core developer terminal, the same system I'd built the Mars itinerary on. Everything was under my ID. Because no one else had the clearance or the patience to file the permits across 2 agencies, 4 international consulates, and 1 off-world logistics court. I pulled up the manifest. Cabin A1, Dr. Yuji Kaoru. Cabin A2, Kaoru Evelyn status, pending override request. Cabin A3, Lillian Kaoru. Cabin A4, Sila's Tran override not yet approved. I stared at my name, still glowing, still in place. The override had been requested but not processed, because I hadn't signed the final authority transfer. Of course I hadn't. No one even asked. They forgot who controlled the oxygen, every life support layer, every emergency beacon. Every Mars surface access clearance was tied to my biometric token, because I was the one who fronted the capital. Silas may have the seat in their heads, but the ship still asked me who breathes and who doesn't. I opened the operations matrix. Paused. This wasn't about vengeance. Not yet. It was about reminding them, so I began making adjustments, not loud ones. Subtle, technical, inarguable. Cabin swap right arrow Silas to B5 support crew housing, no panoramic dome, no personal AI. Surface access, right arrow disabled for unauthorized override passengers. Suit allocation, right arrow reverted to original namesake. Biometric lock restored. Meal priority, right arrow resequenced for registered primary guests only. Comms access, right arrow restricted streaming capability. No social media ports. They wanted the trip. I'll let them have it, but not the version I built for the daughter they erased. I saved the changes, encrypted the log trail, logged off. That night I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because I'd won, but because for the first time in my life, I didn't make myself smaller just to keep peace. The launch terminal was glowing with media drones. Silas had arrived in white sneakers and an ego tailored for attention. "We're honored to represent the next generation of explorers," he told Channel 19, smiling next to my father, who wore the flight jacket I custom-stitched for him last year with my initials unpicked. I wasn't there. Of course I wasn't, but my access logs were. Boarding 0615 UTC Dr. Yuji Kaoru, the check-in AI chirped. "Welcome aboard." Lillian Kaoru, welcome. Then Silas stepped up, holding his biometric card like it was a backstage pass. A soft red light blinked. "Passenger override not validated. Cabin A2 is restricted. Reassignment pending." "There must be some error," he laughed nervously. "I'm part of the delegation." Another blink. The AI repeated. "Access denied for cabin Class A, alternate accommodation available, crew unit B5. My father frowned. "There has to be a mistake. My daughter approved his spot." "No," the agent said politely. She didn't. On board, 2 hours into flight, Silas's charm wore off fast. His cabin had no holo window. His meal pack came without customization. His AI assistant only replied in basic protocol voice, and the crew assumed he was logistics, not guest class. He tried to enter the observatory pod, but the lock pulsed red. "Access level restricted to primary benefactor." The AI paused. That would be Dr. Evelyn Kaoru. Mars orbit day 2. As they approached Mars, the trip began truly unraveling. The surface itinerary was gone. No luxury EVA suits. No dome dinner with Earthview skylines. No private rover. Just the generic group tour, sanitized, scheduled, and shared with 18 strangers. Silas tried to rant to the onboard liaison, but she just blinked. "Your upgrade privileges were tied to the original sponsor's presence. That sponsor is no longer part of this manifest." Meanwhile, back on Earth, I was nowhere near the Mars terminal. I was in Namche, Nepal, 11,000 feet above sea level, no signal, no press. Surrounded by snow, silence, and people who knew nothing about space or betrayal. I brewed tea. I journaled. I hiked until the noise faded. And when I finally checked my inbox 3 days into their trip, I found 3 unread messages. Dad, we need to talk about what happened. Please. Silas, was this your plan? You made me look like a fool. Lillian, I didn't agree with what he did. I hope you're okay. I archived all 3, no reply, because some messages don't deserve answers. They deserve silence and system logs. I didn't cancel their journey. I just deleted the version where I was invisible. They touched down on Mars colony at 0647 MST. The air inside the shuttle was recycled, crisp, but it didn't matter. Because the moment the ramp lowered and that red dust kissed their boots, it hit him. This wasn't the vision I showed her when she was 6. No music, no ceremony, just assigned seating and a name tag that read, Dr. UG Kaoru Companion Class. The tour, they were herded into a group dome, shared with 6 other tourist pairs. No private observation deck. No custom EVA suits. No voice notes from Earth piped in on her AI schedule. Just pre-programmed messages and dry orientation videos on loop. Lillian tried to make the best of it, but her eyes kept drifting to the empty 4th chair at every group meal. Silas barely spoke. The crew mistook him for a supply chain intern and made no effort to correct the error. The moment IT cracked day 3, the group prepared for the descent walk, a low-orbit guided trek across Olympus Mons. Yuji sat in the locker bay, holding the basic Marswalker boots issued to standard guests. Then he noticed it tucked inside the tongue of the boot, a small tag. EK. It wasn't his boot, it was hers, a spare from the custom set she had designed, the one she never wore. He held the boot in both hands, heavy with the weight of his silence. Suddenly, it all broke. She did this, he whispered. All of it, and I erased her from it. Lillian approached quietly. Yuji, she didn't erase herself. You did. He didn't respond. Because deep down he knew this wasn't about Silas. It was about control, about ego, about a man who taught his daughter to build rockets, but never gave her a seat on board. The unsent message that night, he recorded a voice note. Evelyn, I don't deserve to ask this, but if I could go back, I'd give you that seat 1,000 times over. Not because you earned it, but because you were never supposed to have to. He never hit send, because apologies like that, they don't fix 12 years of invisible labor and public credit theft. On a planet 140 million miles from Earth, he finally saw what was missing. And it wasn't the view, it was me. The message came 9 days later, delayed by space latency, compressed, distorted. The subject line read, pending packet, Mars Red Orbit 416 / voice file attached. It sat in my inbox for 3 days. I didn't open it, not out of spite, but because I already knew what it would say. Guilt, shaped into syllables. Regret, clumsily packed into a father's voice, the same voice that once told me you're not a leader, you're just efficient. But on the 4th night, I opened it. Audio file / begin playback. Evelyn, I don't know how to start this. He clears his throat, old habit, still military. This place, it's beautiful, barren, but without you here, it doesn't feel earned. A pause, a shaky inhale. I see it now. The itinerary wasn't the gift. You were, your vision, your discipline, your loyalty, even when I didn't deserve it. Another pause. I thought I was passing the torch. Turns out you were the flame the whole time. Silence, then softer. I hope one day you'll let me hear your voice again. End file. I sat with that silence, not just in the room, but in my chest. The kind that doesn't ache anymore, just hums. I didn't cry. I didn't reply, but I opened the reply field and typed one line. We don't orbit the same anymore, but I'm still transmitting. Then hit send. Justice isn't always revenge. Sometimes it's choosing peace and letting them carry the weight you put down. 6 months later, I stood in front of a room full of young women, future astrobiologists, propulsion engineers, and biomechatronicists. Some of them were fresh out of college. Others had dropped out twice and were just finding their way back. None of them had famous last names. None of them had a father who launched their career. And that was the point. The banner behind me read, Astra Initiative, training the first all-woman Mars crew 2080 launch cycle. I clicked the first slide. A blueprint of a modular Mars outpost, signed E. K. The second slide. A photo of my Eva boots, the same ones my father once held in silence. I told them the truth. I was supposed to be on Mars 6 months ago. I paid for the trip. I planned it and I got replaced. They gasped. I smiled. And now I'm building my own fleet. No one gets replaced here. You either take your seat or build the rocket. Closing scene that night, I walked out onto the observation deck of my lab in Nevada. The stars were sharp, honest. Mars glowed faint in the east, not as a wound anymore, but a lesson. I took out the old mission patch Dad once gave me. It had faded, edges fraying. I didn't throw it away. I stitched it onto my new flight jacket under the words, "For the ones who weren't invited but went anyway." Some legacies you inherit, some you rewrite, and some you launch yourself.